Alright, welcome back to the channel. My name is Dan. Today we're going to be talking about building a deck. Alright, let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about building a deck and just some things to consider if you are a homeowner. So as a homeowner, why would you be watching a video about building a deck? Well, you may decide to DIY it and build it yourself. It is also good just to be informed about the whole process, so when your local carpenter arrives, you have a bit of an idea about what you want and about what you want to do. Now, building a deck, it is a cheap and easy way to add to the footprint of your home. Now, depending on where you live, there may be some local council or government guidelines that you need to stick to, and staying within some certain parameters, you may not even need a permit to build your deck. Now, this obviously depends on where you live in the world. In Australia, for example, we have bushfire zones. This is where houses are built right up on the bush and you're not allowed to use materials like timber. So by figuring this out, this is going to help guide you pick the right materials for the job. So basically, check with your local council, figure out what's required, or don't. I don't really care. Now, choosing materials. Now that you know all about your local council regulations, you will now know whether you can build with timber or whether you have to build with steel or aluminium. But the vast majority of places are going to be fine using timber for the framework. Now, when it comes to framing a deck, well over 90% of the time we are using treated pine, which I think in the States is referred to as pressure treated lumber. Here in Australia, it's treated pine. Now, the reason we use this is it's cheap, it lasts a pretty long time, it's super easy to work with, so your labor costs will be less. Your other option is hardwood. However, hardwood is expensive to buy. It can decay and rot from water damage. Termites are more likely to have a go at it, and it is also quite hard to work with, so your labor costs will probably be higher with a hardwood frame. And then your other option is steel or aluminium. Now, this can be quite expensive, however it does last forever. Difficulty really depends on which system you go with. Some of them are super simple, some of them are a little bit harder to work with. Now for your decking, you got treated pine. It's cheap to buy, it's easy to install, however it doesn't really last long, especially if it's out in the Australian sun. You're lucky to get 5 years out of it before it looks pretty terrible. Your other option, which is super popular in Australia, is hardwood. In Australia, we have a really nice range of hardwood timbers. However, they are more pricey. They are harder to install, so your labor costs will be up a little compared to the treated pine. And a hardwood deck is going to be high maintenance. And last but not least is your composite timbers. Now, these are fairly new to the market. They are on the more expensive side. However, some of them are quite comparable to your hardwood timbers. They are generally very easy to install and they have little to no maintenance. So if maintenance isn't your thing, then I would suggest going for the composites. Now, your other options for decking products on the composite end of things is millboard. It's a really great product. Quite expensive though. It really is more of a high-end product. It doesn't expand and contract the same way the normal plastic composites do. It also requires the deck frame to be built slightly different to all the other types of decking. And your other option is Hardy Deck, which is a fiber cement product. Now, once you get away from the treated pine and the hardwood and you're into these composites and Hardy Decks and millboards, these are all basically zero maintenance. So you're paying a higher upfront cost, however you have no maintenance on oiling or painting or whatever you plan to do with your timber deck. You no longer need to do that anymore with these composites. So you do have a higher outlay, however in the long run you'll probably be better off. You also need to decide for yourself if aesthetically a composite deck is something you like the look of. Just know that the hardwood deck will never look as good as the day you laid it, and there is quite a lot of work in in keeping it looking good. Now, something else to keep in mind when selecting your decking material. Do you have a roof over this structure, or is it getting all day sun? Do you absolutely hate maintenance? Is it being built around a pool? These things are going to affect the product that I would recommend. If you have a roof over the deck, treated pine or hardwood may work fine because it's, your deck's not going to need as much maintenance because it's not getting that all day sun. If you're building around a pool and you're in a really hot climate, then a dark composite timber may not be a good idea. It may just get a little too hot. So once again, things to keep in mind. Now, the other thing to think about is joist protection. Do you want it? Do you want to pay the extra for it? It's basically just a layer that goes on top of your joists and bearers just to keep the water off. So you can ask your local carpenter for that, and that will extend the life of your deck. So once you have your materials selected, that will help dictate your design. For example, if you've decided to use hardwood timber, you will typically have a staggered deck which will be top fixed using screws. If you've gone the composite route, you'll probably have breaker boards, not a staggered deck, and you'll probably have hidden fixings as well. Now remember, your friendly neighborhood carpenter probably has a lot of good ideas as they do this stuff all the time, so make sure you're sort of conversating with them, getting their thoughts on the whole process too. Now, the reason we do hardwood decks as staggered is hardwood is often available in random lengths. Because of this, we stagger the deck. Whereas your composite timbers come straight out of a factory, not from Mother Nature, so they are all the same length. The other reason we use breaker boards when designing a composite deck is because composite decking expands and contracts quite a lot. Now, if you build a composite deck with staggered boards and you have a 5 meter length of decking right next to a 1/2 meter length of decking, the 5 meter board is going to expand and contract quite a lot, whereas your small length won't. And what this means is you're going to end up with different sized gaps. As the sun hits your deck, the longer lengths are going to move a lot and the little lengths aren't going to move much at all. You're going to end up with different sized gaps that'll probably do your head in. I know it will do mine in. So this is why we use breaker boards when using composite timber. Both options look great, it's just certain materials work better in certain layouts. Being an informed homeowner is just going to make the whole process easier for you and for your carpenter. So now you know. For a brief recap, firstly, you should look up your local council regulations. Once you know your regulations, then you'll be able to choose which materials work for you in your location. And once you have your materials selected, then you'll be able to design your deck. Now, if you watched this and you thought, I reckon I could do this myself. Well, watch this video right here. I'm gonna go in depth on how to build a deck. All right, let's go.